The sun was a brutal fist, pounding down on Meadowbrook Lane, where the air smelled of scorched asphalt and wilting petunias. My boots crunched against the gravel as I trudged toward the community water tank, a hulking steel beast tucked behind a sagging chain-link fence. The gauge needle trembled at the halfway mark again. Third time this week. My chest tightened, a coil of frustration winding tighter with every step. Someone was siphoning water, and I knew exactly who. Karen Pritchard, the HOA's self-appointed queen, had been at it for weeks, filling her ridiculous koi pond like she owned the whole damn neighborhood. She didn't know the tank wasn't just some backyard spigot. It fed every house on this street. Every shower, every flush toilet, every glass of water for kids sticky with summer sweat. And she was draining it dry. I wiped the sweat from my brow, the salt stinging my eyes, and muttered a curse under my breath. Karen's house loomed across the cul-de-sac, all pristine white siding and manicured hedges. A suburban castle that screamed better than you. Her voice, sharp as a cracked wine glass, carried from her porch where she was berating the mailman for creasing her catalogs. I clenched my fists, the heat in my gut matching the sun's relentless burn. This wasn't just about water. It was about her entitlement, her smug little notes about my unmowed lawn, her rules that choked the life out of this neighborhood. I'd had enough. The first time I caught her, it was by accident. 2 weeks ago, I'd been up late, nursing a beer on my porch, the cicadas screaming their midnight hymn. A shadow moved near the tank, dragging a hose that glinted under the streetlight. Karen, in her pastel tracksuit, was hooking it up, oblivious to the world. I'd confronted her the next day, voice steady but sharp. Karen, that tank's for everyone. You can't just take what you want. She'd laughed, a brittle sound like ice cracking, and said, "Oh, honey, my fish need clean water. You wouldn't understand." She flicked her wrist, dismissing me like I was some kid tracking mud on her carpet. I'd swallowed my rage then, but it simmered, waiting for a spark. Now, standing by the tank, I heard the faint gurgle of water escaping through a hose she hadn't even bothered to hide. It snaked across the grass, disappearing into her backyard. My hands shook as I followed it, the plastic warm under my fingers, pulsing with stolen water. The audacity of Ither not even trying to cover her track slit, that spark. I yanked the hose free, water spraying in a wild arc, soaking my jeans. The splash was cold, shocking, but it felt good, like a slap to wake me up. I wasn't just going to roll over this time. Her backyard gate creaked as I pushed it open, the scent of jasmine hitting me like a perfumed fist. Her koi pond sparkled, fat orange fish gliding under lily pads, oblivious to the chaos their owner was causing. Karen stood by her patio, phone pressed to her ear, her voice a grating sing-song. "Yes, I need the landscaper here by noon. My roses are wilting, and it's an eyesore." She hadn't seen me yet. I cleared my throat, loud enough to make her jump. The phone slipped from her hand, clattering onto the glass table. "What the hell are you doing in my yard?" She snapped, her eyes narrowing to slits. I held up the dripping hose. "This yours?" Funny, it was hooked to the community tank. Again, my voice was low, but it trembled with the weight of weeks of frustration. Her lips curled into that familiar smirk, the one that said she was untouchable. "My pond needs water. It's not my fault the tank's low. Maybe if people stopped wasting it on their tacky sprinklers." Tacky. I cut her off, stepping closer. The air between us crackled, thick with the scent of her overpriced perfume and my sweat-soaked shirt. "Karen, that tank powers the whole damn neighborhood. Every house. You're not just stealing from Mayori, screwing over everyone." Her smirk faltered, but only for a second. She crossed her arms, her bangles jangling like warning bells. "Don't be dramatic. It's just a little water." That's when I heard Ida's soft cough from the side of the yard. My eyes flicked over, and there was Mrs. Delgado, the quiet widow from 2 houses down, standing by the fence. Her hands twisted a dish towel, her face pale under the brim of her straw hat. She wasn't supposed to be here, wasn't supposed to see this, but her eyes were wide, glistening with something like fear. "Is it true?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The tank. It's why my water pressure's been so low. 2 couldn't even wash my dishes this morning. Karen's head snapped toward her, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of unease in her eyes. Mrs. Delgado wasn't part of her HOA clique. Wasn't someone she could bully with a snide letter or a fake smile. The old woman stepped forward, her voice growing stronger. My grandson's been sick. Needs clean water for his medicine. You've been taking it for fish. The word dripped with disbelief, and I felt the air shift, like the neighborhood itself was holding its breath. Karen opened her mouth, but no words came. I seized the moment, my voice rising, carrying across the yard. She's been doing it for weeks. Mrs. Delgado, draining the tank for her pond, her roses, her damn ego, while kids go thirsty and pipes run dry. I turned to Karen, my heart pounding so loud I could hear it over the distant hum of a lawnmower. You thought no one would notice, didn't you? Thought you could just take and take. Her face flushed red, then white. You're blowing this out of proportion, she stammered, but her voice cracked, betraying her. Mrs. Delgado shook her head, her lips trembling. I'm telling the others, she said, turning toward the gate. They need to know. Karen lunged forward, her hand outstretched. Wait. You don't understand, but Mrs. Delgado was already gone, her footsteps fading into the hum of the summer afternoon. The next few days were a blur of whispers and glares. Word spread like wildfire, crackling through Meadowbrook Lane. At the next HOA meeting, the community center was packed, the air thick with the smell of coffee and righteous anger. Karen sat at the front, her usual throne, but her shoulders were hunched, her manicured nails tapping nervously on the table. I stood in the back, arms crossed, watching as neighbors I barely knew stood up one by one. Mr. Patel, who ran the corner store, spoke of his kids' baths cut short by low pressure. The Garcias, whose toddler had been drinking bottled water because their tap sputtered brown. Even Jake, the teenage skateboarder Karen always chased off her lawn, muttered about his mom's garden wilting. Karen tried to defend herself, her voice shrill, insisting it was just a misunderstanding. But the room wasn't having it. Mrs. Delgado, frail but fierce, stood and recounted what she'd seen, her words cutting through the murmurs like a blade. She knew, she said, pointing a trembling finger at Karen. She knew, and she didn't care. The crowd erupted, voices overlapping, a chorus of outrage that drowned out Karen's protests. I felt a pang of something satisfaction, maybe, but laced with pity. She'd built her empire on control, and now it was crumbling. The vote was swift. Karen was stripped of her HOA presidency, her name scratched from the board in a flurry of raised hands. She sat frozen, her face a mask of shock, as the gavel slammed down. But it wasn't over. I'd done some digging, called the city water department, and learned the tank's overuse could trigger fines, big ones. Fines the neighborhood would have to pay unless someone took responsibility. I stepped forward, my voice steady now, no longer shaking. Karen, you've got a choice. Own up to the city. Pay the fine yourself, or we'll make sure they know exactly who caused this. The room went silent, the air heavy with the weight of justice. Karen's eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw fear, raw, unfiltered. She nodded, a single, jerky motion, and whispered, I'll pay. The words were barely audible, but they landed like a thunderclap. The crowd exhaled, a collective sigh of relief, and I felt the coil in my chest finally loosen. As I walked home that night, the air cooler now, scented with rain on the horizon, I passed the tank. The gauge was climbing back up, slowly but surely. Meadowbrook Lane wasn't perfect, never would be, but it was ours again. Karen's koi pond was drained the next day, the fish rehomed, her roses left to fend for themselves. She kept her head down after that, her castle quieter, her smirk gone. The neighborhood breathed easier, the pipes hummed stronger, and somewhere in the distance, a kid laughed, splashing in a sprinkler that finally worked. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's quiet, steady, like water flowing back where it belongs. And as I stepped onto my porch, the cicadas singing their endless song. I knew one thing for sure. We'd fought for what was ours. And we'd won.